The United States government is teetering on the brink of yet another shutdown, a nail-biting déjà vu as Congress races against the midnight hour to fund federal agencies. This is not the first time it's happening. It's the fourth time in a decade that a shutdown might slam the doors. What's at stake? Well, everything from your next flight to those cherished national parks and even marriage licenses. So, let's delve into the intricacies of a government shutdown, dissecting its consequences on individuals, businesses, and the broader economy. But before we begin, we would like you guys to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and hit the notification bell icon so you do not miss out on amazing and entertaining content. What is government shutdown? I guess the burning question on your mind right is, what exactly is a government shutdown? And how will it impact you? Well, let me break it down for you. You see, this entire situation revolves around something that's been making headlines this year: the debt ceiling. The debt ceiling is essentially the maximum amount of money that the United States can borrow to cover its various obligations. These obligations include things like Social Security, Medicare benefits, military salaries, interest on the national debt, tax refunds, and a slew of other essential services that keep the country running. When you look at that whopping $33 trillion national debt, it's not just a random number. Lawmakers deliberately set an overall budget that the United States can spend. Even though the US avoided defaulting on their debt earlier this year, they are facing another hurdle: the 2024 budget. Despite agreeing to raise the debt ceiling until 2025, how Congress actually allocates that money is a whole different story. Typically, these budgets are approved by September 30th, at the end of the fiscal year, setting the budget for the following year. If they can't reach an agreement by then, we end up with what's called a government shutdown. It might sound absurd that the entire government can come to a grinding halt because lawmakers can't see eye to eye, but it's all rooted in the Anti-Deficiency Act of 1884. This act states that federal agencies can't spend or commit money without approval from Congress. So, if there's no bipartisan agreement in place by October 1st, federal agencies are legally bound to halt all non-essential activities. In simpler terms, the US can't spend money unless Congress says it can, and right now, Congress is at a deadlock. In the worst-case scenario, this means that all non-essential government activities would come to a standstill. That includes a crucial one: the collection, processing, and examination of government data, including vital statistics like employment and inflation figures. These numbers are what the Federal Reserve relies on to make critical decisions, like whether to raise interest rates, and that's set to happen on November 1st. Why is it happening? Now, before we delve into the repercussions this might have on your finances and the overall economy, let's uncover the why behind this looming crisis. Trust me, it's not what you might think. As I mentioned earlier, the government operates on an annual spending cycle, with laws setting out how future funds should be allocated. However, when there's a deadlock between political parties, things get intriguing. In a smooth world, a budget would sail through the House of Representatives, secure Senate approval, and then land on the president's desk for a signature. But in 2023, the House is under Republican leadership, while the Senate is predominantly Democrat. To pass any bill, they need a unanimous nod, meaning someone's got to compromise. To make matters even more complex, the Republicans in the House are divided. Some staunchly believe that the upcoming budget should slash spending. Kevin McCarthy, the House Majority Leader, appears caught in a precarious position, making promises to both the far right and moderates to keep his seat. It's clear that satisfying all these demands without causing a rift is nigh impossible. So, he faces a tough call: push for spending cuts that won't fly in the Senate, leading to a government shutdown, or give in to the majority to keep the funds flowing but risking his own position. So, the Republicans must first find common ground within their ranks, and then muster compromise with the Senate. If this isn't achieved by October 1st, brace yourselves for the fallout. When it comes to the immediate impact, the White House has warned that beyond active-duty military and federal law enforcement personnel, many would be forced to work without pay until funds are sorted. FEMA's disaster relief funds might run dry, affecting everything from TSA and the FDA to nearly all federally funded agencies. Goldman Sachs analysts predict that every week the government remains shut translates to a 0.2% hit on the gross domestic product. But that's not all. A government shutdown could stall vital official statistics like the September jobs report and the Consumer Price Index, crucial data the Federal Reserve relies on to decide whether to raise interest rates, a decision looming just 4 weeks from now. Effect on stock market? Now, when it comes to how a government shutdown might impact the stock market and your investments, answer is a bit of a roller coaster. You see, history tells us a mixed tale. The worst government shutdown, back in the 1970s, sent stocks plummeting by nearly 4%. But in late 2018, during a shutdown that stretched over a month, the markets took an unexpected turn and rallied over 13%. So, from that angle, it appears that a shutdown doesn't always wield its influence with a heavy hand. However, it's worth noting that certain sectors bear the brunt more than others. Defense firms, some healthcare companies, and government contractors are hit head-on. But for the broader market, the compass needle points toward corporate earnings, interest rates, and other macro factors as the main influencers. And guess what? Government shutdowns aren't as rare as you might think. Since 1976, there have been a whopping 20 of them, with the longest dragging on for a seemingly endless 34 days in 2018-2019. On average, these shutdowns lasted just 8 days. Surprisingly, during these episodes, the S&P 500 danced an odd tango. Higher during 10 of them, lower during the other 10. In the end, its average return? A resounding 0. The real impact is felt by government and federal employees. They're caught in a tough spot, working without pay or going through a furlough, hoping things will get back to normal soon. But beneath the surface, all this drama often boils down to a political game of chicken. It's like watching two cars racing toward each other, daring the other to swerve first. It's all about pushing various spending agendas until, at the very last moment, when it feels like everything's about to break, they miraculously reach an agreement. So, while the headlines might sound downright terrifying, most of it is political drama. Unless you're directly employed by a federal agency, there's a good chance you'll weather this storm with little more than a front-row seat to a high-stakes political showdown. United States credit rating. However, one critical aspect that's flying under the radar amidst all this turmoil is the impact of all this on the United States credit rating. This is something few are talking about, but it's an alarming concern. For those who might not know, the United States relies heavily on borrowed money, and to assess how likely they are to repay those loans, they're given a credit rating. Every country has one of these, but for the longest time, the US was considered the gold standard. Why? Well, they're the world's reserve currency, and they've always paid back their debts in full, on time, without any fuss. But on August 1st, a credit agency downgraded the US from the prestigious AAA rating to a AA+. Now, you might wonder, why is this such a big deal? It's only the second time in history this has happened, and it's not just a symbolic change. When the US is seen as a riskier bet, they have to offer higher interest rates to lure investors, which means more money going out and less coming in. Earlier this year, the US came dangerously close to a government default. Their national debt has soared past $33 trillion, and with interest rates hitting 20-year highs, that interest bill is ballooning. Plus, the political divide seems too vast to bridge. When S&P downgraded the US from AAA to AA+, all three major stock indexes plummeted by 5-7% in a single day. Recovery took nearly a year, but the bigger issue today isn't whether the US will default on its debt. It's about eroding investor confidence. Moody's, the only major credit agency yet to downgrade the US, has pointed out that a short-lived shutdown wouldn't disrupt the economy, but would underscore US institutional and governance weaknesses compared to other AAA-rated countries. Now, what do I think will realistically happen? Well, my bet is that at the 11th hour, just before a shutdown becomes inevitable, they'll miraculously strike an agreement using an emergency bill to fund the government for another 4 to 6 weeks. It's far from ideal, but a shutdown benefits no one. However, all this political posturing comes at the expense of investor confidence within the US, a harm that far outweighs any perceived benefits. So, there you have it, a glimpse into the high-stakes drama of a potential government shutdown. Now, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this recurring political showdown? How do you think it will affect average Joe? Share your insights and opinions in the comments below. If you found this video engaging, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more thought-provoking content. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to hearing from you.